make me a data center architecture learning plan. Like that's, and give me the YouTubes, give me the podcasts, like you can do that. What I'm finding is like some of these haves and have nots, and this gets back into being accidentally anti-innovation, is kind of shaking out around like participants and non-participants. Because if you're that person I told you who's just like, I read a thing that said the chip isn't ready, call me in 5 years, you kind of signed up to be a have-not if anything changes before 5 years.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
Like you opted out. And so I think my concern is that like, and that's why I was attracted to blockchain, is because this idea of like democratizing information, being able to democratize tools and resources, the idea, the ethos of that, right? And so what I'm seeing is there's more and more knowledge and information and resources getting democratized, and people even having like this kind of introductory offer and like wanting to put it out there. But a lot of people are just kind of either opting out or tuning out or like doing the kick the can down the road thing. And I think that actually, and that's why I say like have nots in terms of like not economics, but in terms of like awareness and participation.
So let's suppose like today someone opted out, like I'm not doing this right. Fast forward 5 years, this person is in a bad economic shape. Their life's not going good. They start complaining like the war's against me. I have no opportunity. Well, what do you tell that person then? Like, hey, you made a choice. You have to rid of the decision, or you're like more like, okay, like you made a bad choice. Let me try to fix it some kind of way.
Well, what I would say to that person is, and I think we saw a little bit of that. My undergrad is in logistics and supply chain, and so even when I was learning about logistics and supply chain, I was still learning that 20 years ago when the shakeout was still happening with outsourcing, right? The American thing, manufacturing's too hard, it's too expensive, it's the convenience thing. I'm gonna let another country do it, and now we see the pendulum swinging the other way, like, oh my god, I can't believe it, but that person in like 5 years, just like those people now who are kind of like trying to unring the bell for manufacturing, it's like there will be new and other opportunities, but my question to them is like, so that thing that you did with cloud computing where you were like, that's not a thing or whatever, or that thing you did with digitized files, everything's going to be on paper, or the internet's not going to those people, right? Those tend to be kind of those people, right? Are we going to do it better and differently this time, right? And because that's the thing, it's not to say that all opportunities disappear. It's quite the contrary. There's like a lot of discovery and all that. I just think that your positioning, and you're going to have to be kind of like on a catch-up path, just similar like AI right now, right? There's a bunch of people for ethical or whatever reason who's like, I'm not doing anything AI. Okay, like, okay. And once again, that's not to say that there won't be an opportunity for those folks, but it is to say, like I said, if this is a lot of competition, there's a difference between coming in some place in the ranking, coming to the race late, and then forfeiting altogether. And I think it's one thing to go to the mat losing and trying. Yeah. It's another thing to forfeit.
Yeah, big difference. So change the subjects. Let's talk about the future of space.
Oh, space.
So what do you think is the future of space?
Well, I think we're starting, that's another future present thing, right? I mean, I've seen some space startups doing like space junk removal because we already have an IoT space junk problem. International Space Station is about to be deprecated. So we're already seeing, we already saw, with all sorts of things like this kind of privatization of everything from like rockets to satellites to internet access, and now
space tourism coming up.
Yeah, space tourism. Space is a really interesting one that has this kind of intersection with quantum, because people are just, hey, quantum is going to be overkill for a lot of things, right? Project Willow, benchmark problem, 5 minutes, 10 septillion years otherwise, right? Wall Street doesn't even have a problem that complicated, right? But space does. Space is space. And so when you think about like orbital paths and orbital collision prevention, like we're going to need space traffic control. Like that's a thing that we look at Barclay with Future Tech is like, how can we run these quantum simulations that are running a physics word problem every moment on every sensor across a network of satellites in a way that we can tell them to move out of the way, create a recommendation, move it out of the way, not damage these high value assets. That's an important problem in space right now that a lot of people are thinking about, how do we solve for that? Precision. So another area of quantum. So there's these 4 areas they talk about. There's computing, which is the thing you and I have talked about. But there's communication. So that gets into the VPMs and quantum key distribution. There's sensing, and there's also simulation. And so on sensing and simulation, this gets really interesting because quantum one thing it is good at and for is like really precise, like precision sensing. And when it comes to outer space in orbital forces, you're gonna want that precision. You're gonna want that precision big time. So that's another thing like outside of the compute.
Is there gonna be such a thing in the future where mining minerals on asteroids? Is that gonna be a thing you think?
There's already people working on that.
Okay.
There's also already people working on launching orbital data center nodes. And I'm going to give you the really quick, not rocket science, data center expert. They said, I was paying attention, they said, we're going to have these data center nodes in space because space is cold and we won't have to deal with overheating. And space has a power source called the sun.
That's genius.
And that's why they're going to do orbital data centers. And I'm like, I follow that. That was a great explain like I'm 5.
Have y'all invested in or looking to invest in any space tech thing at Barklow?
Yeah, that's definitely something that's on the table. Like I said, just because of that sensing, simulation, and even like edge computing. Remember I mentioned there's like the 10 types of, there's edge computing where it's like we are going to have to figure out like stuff on device, which is, there's a lot of satellite stuff that runs on edge compute. And then when it comes to useful quantum computing, you kind of need to have high performance compute right there. You're going to need a whole lot of horsepower to wrangle what you get from those sensors and to run these kind of simulations.
So do we actually have quantum chips right now?
Yes.
And what are they made at?
It depends. Like, so remember I told you about the different compute architectures. So one of them is like trapped ions and all that. That's what IonQ does. There's superconductivity ones.
But what countries though?
So IonQ is an American company.
Okay, you always say like all the chips are made in Taiwan, right?
Oh, so you're thinking about GPUs and like that kind of thing. Well, that's the interesting thing about quantum is like that's part of why the race is on because one of the I think kind of gold rush sort of prizes when you think about like commercializing quantum and you're just focused on chips and compute is people that is kind of what they think about is like how can I be the NVIDIA?
Yeah.
How can I be the QPU?
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. So like so we have. It's not that we don't have brilliant people here. Like Chad Rigetti is somebody that like my fund partner knows, and there's Rigetti and. There was a economic resource development conference here this past week, and Nardo was on a panel with folks from IonQ, Photonics Inc. in Canada. So those things like definitely exist. Like those folks are out there. I do think it's interesting that people who are in that camp of these are the challenges. It's hard. It's expensive. Like don't pay attention for 5 years. I think what they fail to realize is some of those companies. Alice and Bob is out of France. There's more. There's lots of them. And even some of like the dual use DARPA, quantum enabled, like that kind of stuff. I mean, we're talking dozens of patents pending right now. And so I do think that it's interesting to hear people to be like, oh, that's in the future, that's not here. And I'm kind of like, well, there's a lot of NDAs, there's a lot of patents, that's a lot of architectures for there to be like nothing here.
So you did something called 1871 Emerging Tech Innovation Summit. I think you spoke there. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I got connected to 1871 through one of my contacts who was she was there. She was moderating, doing keynote, and she's been part of this community there in Chicago for a while. And she had asked me if I would be available to come out and do one of the keynotes because they had these different tracks on blockchain and AI. And so I did a talk around innovation, around like the myth of the next big thing. And it's basically just like, one kind of like what I was sharing with you is that like this idea of like the S curve of innovation, it fails to realize that there's multiple S curves happening all at once. And there's a cumulative effect of like innovation, which makes it so like there is no one thing. And the types of things that we're innovating, we're innovating up, down, and across the tech stack, especially right now. So at Barklow, we've come to call this the convergence era. So the last 25 years, we get to see how humans behave with the internet. But we call it the connectivity era. Everything kind of hinged on connectivity. And whether it was like infrastructure, compute, it was all because humans could connect. Like what else could we connect to? What do we do with the data? How do we secure it? How do we make it faster? How do we sell solutions now that we're connected and we can work remotely? Like all these different things and everything's digital, right? But now we believe we're in what we call the convergence era, which is you no longer can be like we were talking about with AI, like, hey, I came up with this thing, that's Azure's problem to figure out how we power it and how many more data sets. Like you're really going to have to start thinking about how all of these things across security, hardware, software, algorithms, ethics, job displacement. There's going to be this convergence of these technologies where if you are a leader or a technologist or even an enterprise IT portfolio, you're not going to be able to look at things as these little discrete parts on a linear timeline. They're all going to be these highly dynamic components that really affect like your business performance, your outcomes, either as a consumer of this tech or as somebody who produces it and has other customers relying on your infrastructure out there.
Does barcode mean anything, or is this a random name y'all picked?
So it's a combination of my co-founder Johnny, hi Johnny, and my last name. So his last name is Berrigan, and my last name is Klaus.
Okay, cool.